Alrighty, Roger here to talk about Megaman Legends.
Hi, I'm Rugal. I'm here to help you.
Oh, Magnet Man?
Well, you have a Tails recolor for Sonic Dissected, so you might as well have a Magnet Man clone for Mega Man Dissected.
Okay, so there's a new Kickstarter for Red Ash, which seems to be a spiritual successor to Megaman Legends, or Rockman Dash in Japanese. It's never officially said, but then again, look at the title. Red Ash, Re-Dash, redoing Rockman Dash. There's even the word Legends in the subtitle for the Western name. Not to mention they take deliberate care to mention Megaman Legends in part of the work experience of every member of the development team. And obviously the characters look like Mega Man Roll and Teasel Bond, so that's great. So, I figured this might be a very good time to take a look at Megaman Legends and eventually Red Ash and its Kickstarter for a little dissecting. So, let's talk Mega Man. In the early days I noticed there's two types of platformers. Really tight challenge super gameplay platformers, born from the arcades. These were super efficient games where every square inch of the screen is filled with dangers and rewards, and it's all about perfect manipulation of the rules of the game. Then there's the more default action game tourist type of platforming. This is when the focus is more on letting the player interact with a world, their own or a movie licenses, and the platform gameplay elements are added to give it a gameplay context. So even though it's still clearly gameplay driven, these games do take a break here and there, where they just let you enjoy the worlds you're inhabiting, with rich backgrounds and animations and context, having a bit more of a quiet pace to them. So it's not just a platformer, but hey, I'm really Aladdin, really interacting with scenes from the movie. Sweet. Mega Man kinda combined the both of them. The screen could scroll and show off gorgeous graphics to immerse the gamer into the world of Mega Man with its futuristic cities and water facilities and robotic forests and train stations and sky cities, yet could swap to a more arcade-style single-screen action where the levels became more intense, where every square inch of the screen has a distinct purpose. Another thing of note is how, despite intense challenges, the game was also quite happy to hand you the tools to break the game. E-containers to refill your life, or using Rush the Dog or other items to fly over obstacles, or using the enemies of Robot Masters to make battles much easier. The game was almost ingenious how it managed to both give the gamers the feeling they could cheat the system and break the game, yet suddenly turn the tables the next level, where you would suddenly need those cheats just to traverse normally through the stage. Again, it's more than happy to let you break the game, but it's even happier to suddenly pull the rug out under you and turn the tables back to its own favor.
I enjoyed the sense of creativity that was shown. Seeing the fish enemies for the first time in Bubble Man's stage was astounding, and being able to have a choice in where I went to fight the Robot Masters was something that I wasn't used to compared to Mario 1 and Mario 2. Having E-tanks, using different types of powers were things that drew me into the game.
Right, the freedom of choice the game gave you, that the developers had faith in the player to make big choices and handle big power-ups and aren't held on a leash. Very unique elements Mega Man brought to the table for especially those days. Anyway, though no doubt most classic Mega Man fans love the games for its challenges and tight gameplay, I mostly fell in love with the series for two other things: its rich universe and the sense of power it gave me. Power, which I just explained, and a universe because, huzzah, a platformer that isn't taking place in generic grassland and desert land, but this great looking future, not a depressing colorless future, but one with funny looking houses and nice looking pastel colors, bright blue sky, advanced technology, but still a touch of nature everywhere. It's great, and tiny little touches of it taking place in a living, breathing world. Mega Man isn't just action hero man, but he lives in a laboratory and has pets and a professor and the girl that always confused me since he never did anything and had any dialogue up to Mega Man 7, so it seems kinda random. But hey, it just made me curious and more willing to take a closer look. So Mega Man Legends was revealed and I loved the idea of 3D Mega Man. With the first images of Mega Man on roll walking around those colorful cities, I was hooked. Finally going to get a closer look at this wonderful world. At that point I didn't know this was a different incarnation of Mega Man, mind you. So great, the universe will be expanded and I'll be able to really explore the world of Mega Man up close. Cool! Wasn't worried that the gameplay was different, especially since Mega Man X and Classic Mega Man were still being made anyway, so whatever.
Mega Man Legends was unique to me as well. I saw commercials for it. It was amazing to see Mega Man in a 3D world. I had just witnessed that with Mario and Super Mario 64, and I got that same reaction when I saw Mega Man running around in a 3D world. So I could imagine all those 2D battles and all that gameplay and what I would love to see in a 3D-esque world come to life, and it was just amazing seeing it for the first time. Seeing the characters, seeing how much it was different, yet it didn't feel like it was totally trying to remake or rework the Megaman series. It was its own entity and could be put in the same place as Mega Man and Mega Man X at that time.
So right, enough about us. Let's talk about the game. First, gameplay. Obviously, it's not trying to be a 3D Mega Man in the vein of the old games. Instead, it's doing its own little thing. It's often compared to 3D Zelda, although the first Legends game was released a full year before Ocarina of Time started the light of day, though it could have been inspired by an early work in progress of this type of game, or it's just a natural way 3D adventures were going to be. Whatever. So, Legends is Ocarina of Time with guns. Or is it? Okay, so in a big portion of this video, I'll be comparing Legends to 3D Zelda, and why I prefer Mega Man Legends. This puts me into a dangerous position, as obviously Zelda is the better of the two in general. After all, Zelda's popular and still going strong, while Legends is in severe danger. So obviously Zelda is superior, generally speaking. Also, the two are going for an entirely different perspective. A different way of how you process a story and atmosphere and emotions and gameplay, so they can't really be directly compared, not in a good versus bad way at least. Regardless, they are a lot alike, and I prefer Mega Man's usage of the 3D action RPG style over Zelda, so that's the angle I'm going for here. Just saying that I acknowledge Zelda is superior, and that's, whatever, I'll get angry Zelda fans throwing rocks at me anyway. Let's just begin. Alright, so 3D games. In the 90s, when 3D games were starting to appear, there were a lot of awkward problems developers had to work around. Big, vast, three-dimensional environments took a lot of space and a lot of development time. So besides games that kind of cheated with their 3D, like Doom, which is more a manipulation of 2D graphics, those games were always pretty short in real-estate content. Racing games only had 3 tracks, platform games recycled the same stages over and over, or were extremely compact and small. It's all really condensed. So a problem I had with a lot of early 3D games is that I felt they often kept me on a leash. Like in Zelda, the early games had a much faster pace. You could speed off and smash enemies left and right. Where in the 3D games, it felt like it took the developers so much time and effort to make each room that they really wanted to keep you there for a long period of time. Now, I go into Zelda with a more action game mentality, which is the wrong mentality, but hey, that's how my brain works, and I love how Link jumps and flips and spins and smashes his sword around, and I really wish the games had tons of huge chunks of stage where I could just jump and fight and do action things to my heart's content. So needless to say, Hyrule Field from Ocarina of Time is one of my favorite segments of the Zelda games, and the Riverside section too. However, they sadly become very rare in the series later on. Most of the time, the game keeps you on a leash. Everything is blocked, constantly locked inside of a room. Every corner and every inch of each room needs to be thoroughly investigated, because the room switch is always hidden in the place I missed 500 times in a row. It makes me feel restricted. I constantly have to open the inventory, and I constantly have to check everything, and the pace is very stop and go, stop and go. It's constantly locking you inside of, things to do, into chores. Now, this works in two directions. On one hand, this makes everything feel relevant and give it weight. Because every room takes a lot of time and concentration, everything feels important, so that creates a form of charm and intensity. But it disrupts the pace and action flow. Like, you constantly need to figure out what to do, and constantly have to open your inventory, constantly have to manipulate items. Mega Man Legends, on the other hand, has much more disposable level sections. Big chunks of levels where you can just run and jump and shoot and screw around to your heart's content, which is, again, a double-edged sword. On one hand, you get a lot more room and corridors and open areas that seem interchangeable and are filler. On the other hand, it makes the game feel a lot more of an action game with the flow and energy that goes with it. The game has tons of rooms and corridors to spare, so it doesn't feel the need to keep you locked up everywhere. You can just keep on trucking. Rarely screwing around in your inventory or constantly figuring out what to do. Just go to every room and corridor on the map that you haven't been to yet and fight robots. Woohoo! So within the Zelda games, on the extreme edges you can either have the ones that are non-stop dungeons like Skyward Sword and Minish Cap, or it's non-stop puzzles and items to manipulate, even in the overworld, or on the other extreme something like Hyrule Warriors. Awesome arcade action that gets boring after 30 minutes because of the lack of variation. With the other games plenty in between. So my Personal favorite action RPG shouldn't be on either of the extremes, but in the middle. Preferably on the action side, but still with exploration and little thought problems to keep it from becoming a button masher action arcade game that runs out of steam in 30 minutes. And Megaman Legends has that perfect balance for me. Well, mostly Legends too, because there's constant enemies to fight and money to get, where Legends 1 has more quiet sections that are entirely for atmosphere, though it's still fun to skate around in. Whee! Anyway, you got your towns to explore, side quests to find, occasional water levels and buttons to manipulate and items to find, but there's a huge emphasis on action. Enormous boss battles and action set pieces take easily just as much of your times as the dungeons do, and there's no shortage of enemies.
Though I would still have to counteract that, to me, playing Mega Man Legends felt like transitioning the 2D gameplay to a 3D setting. Now that's not to say that everything was exactly like the 2D Mega Mans. You didn't have to worry about falling spike pits, or precise jumps, or disappearing and reappearing platforms. But it had that sense where I could feel it be just like that.
Sure, the focus is still on jumping and shooting. And it has that same giving players power to break the game thing to it, that unlike Zelda you can actually buy upgrades and better armor and stronger weapons, so with grinding you can get yourself ridiculously strong, while Zelda keeps you on a leash and only lets you occasionally get a heartbeat at most. And again, Legends is also happy to pull the rug out under you and present you with a challenge that will make you more than happy that you've gotten yourself some intense upgrades. But hey, it's up to you. If you got the skills, you can do without. It's no annoying villagers forcing you to.
It was a very big, fresh breath of air when it comes to dealing with how 3D gameplay should be in a platforming game as compared to something like Mario, and I feel that this game is better for it, that it helped really push the whole adventure platformer action gameplay that would be in later Legend of Zeldas, but it was more uniform in that it was structured and kind of less of a open world feeling. I feel, especially in Mega Man Legends 1, that it did a better job of making a template for other 3D games to have that type of open-ended gameplay.
Right, the story. Mega Man Legends has a few small comparisons with Zelda again. Although technically Mega Man Volnut can talk, and talk quite a bit in the games, I still feel often he's kind of written like how a mute character in an RPG would be written. Again, yes, he does talk, but I do notice he rarely has outspoken opinions or decisions or big statements to make in the cutscenes. Most of the time he's just cool with everything. Wanna kill me? Okay, cool. Oh, you wanna be friends with me now? Okay. You stole my equipment? Alright. Oh, you want a 10-year-old boy to donate enough money to renovate an entire city for the damages it received because your own police force was too incompetent for fighting robots? Sure thing. He doesn't really put his stamp on things. I don't mind really, partly because that's pretty much my own personality, so when it comes to making the hero super relatable to boring old me, it does a fantastic job. Not to mention, cheerful kid anime heroes are often extremely preachy and constantly lecturing everyone and boasting about their stupid little 12-year-old life philosophies. That's infuriating, especially when the actual events of the story never even demonstrates what the hero is preaching. So, having a hero that shut his trap and just does his thing, while the morals of the story just flow naturally from the events, is a huge relief compared to most of those other cheerful, optimistic RPG stories. And even better, it also helps with leaving a lot of the decision-making to the player, therefore connecting gameplay and story more tightly. Mega Man Legends has a strong morality system in place, so while he comes across like a nice shy boy, it can also be interpreted he's just passive-aggressive, or upholding a nice facade while in reality is pretty cruel. It's up to the player to interpret his personality with the actions you make him do, because Mega Man is rarely lecturing or making a big deal out of his principles here. You can easily stretch and transform his personality to suit your gameplay input. This is also helped by the fact that most of the side quests and stuff you can do for the villagers is entirely optional. It's only the pirate battles that are really mandatory, unlike Zelda where more than half the quests are forced upon you. There's also things going on like the love triangle between Mega Man, Roll, and Tron. And again, because Mega Man never outright chooses and is usually standing around like a dope during those scenes, you can pretty much interpret your own preference onto him. Although it's disappointing you can only give presents to Roll, would be neat if you could also send gifts to Tron through the mail to keep the love triangle balanced, but whatever.
Mega Man Volnut is more fleshed out than Link, only due to the fact that Link was made to be the character that the player can put themselves as their identity of what they want to do in the game, even though it really doesn't matter in the long point in many Zelda games, because you're essentially doing what the game wants you to do. There's no real free, good or evil choices. That kinda is the way that Digital Pictures would make their games to be. Where you're playing an invisible protagonist or a Deus Ex Machina, and in ways characters like Ghost and Falco from Sewer Shark need this person to help fly and shoot the enemies. Or with Dana Plato in Night Trap, this invisible person is setting traps for the vampires in the house. They themselves can't do that sort of thing, so they're relying on this guardian angel, so to speak, to help them through any situation. Volna is different because while he's an android, he's given ways to be different in his attitudes depending on what he does, such as like kicking trash cans or helping a museum with finding new artifacts on the island.
Well, sure, although Zelda also has stuff like that, like looking for the golden spider things and Majora's Mask side quests. But there's a lot less emphasis on morality and consequences. It's either you do it and get a reward, or you don't. It doesn't feel as impactful as in Mega Man, where the world feels more interactive and people talk differently towards you depending on how you act, and buildings start to get more details, and the city shapes up because of your actions. So with Zelda, I found the empty main character kind of pointless. I don't really feel like Link. I'm just a video game puppet doing video game things because mommy tells me to. Ironically, Legends becomes better in both ways. Not only by giving me more input is Vol not having a toned down personality increasing my personal involvement as a Link character should, but by still giving him some sort of interactivity with the side characters, does the story feel more natural. Where with most mute heroes, I'm getting annoyed that the hero just stands around looking like a dope.
Another interesting thing about Mega Man is its lore and universe. See, just like with Zelda, the entire Mega Man series can be put on a timeline, which is pretty cool. So you got the Zelda timeline, which has one cool thing: the timeline split through Ocarina of Time, and occasionally the games might give you a shocking answer like, why Link wears a hat? Ooh. Except oops, then another prequel comes up and Link's already wearing the same hat here, so never mind. Oh. Although I do like how you see the technology change through the timeline of Zelda. Like in Skyward Sword, at the earliest point in timeline, right now, we see an ancient civilization that has a robot factory and everything. Then afterwards, most Zelda games take place in a medieval setting, and then one of the final games in the chronological timeline, the NES one, has nothing but rocks and caves where people live in, like cavemen. That's great! The villagers in the Zelda universe are so passive and stupid that their civilization evolves ass backwards. Wonderful, I love it. I'm joking. The second NES games go back to the medieval times. Anyway, since any not direct sequel game feels standalone, I don't see much of a point of a timeline. Mega Man's timeline, on the other hand, is all about growth, change, and evolution. All the games fit neatly in one timeline, except Battle Network and Star Force, which are their own little universe. Starting with classic Mega Man, Mega Man was created as Lab Assistant first and became Robot Fighter second, which is why he has that strong "we shouldn't fight, we must be friends" personality. His first priority is make guests feel at home and serve them a cup of tea. He doesn't fight robots unless there's direct danger, and makes sense for the world he's made for. During classic Mega Man, it's a human civilization like ours, and Mega Man is the ambassador for robots. There to show humans that robots can be useful and great and deserve a chance. Then we go a couple centuries ahead and get to the second Mega Man incarnation, X and his buddy Zero. Now robots are fully integrated into society and don't need an ambassador anymore. Instead, now civil wars are breaking out as the robots are struggling for their place in society and go maverick. So the next Mega Man is more police officer Mega Man. Not there to make friends, but to uphold society and arrest bad guys. Well, or just shoot them. X never bothers to find a non-lethal way to stop enemies, despite his constantly whining about violence. Anyway, a third incarnation, Mega Man Zero. After several wars, humans have become untrusting of robots and a little extreme on taking precautions, which leads to a new incarnation of Mega Man and his buddy Zero, going a little crazy in their obsession and justice and becoming psychopathic dictator monsters, and end up becoming the actual villains this time around. Fortunately, the old Zero and X are still around to stop them. Mega Man Zero is almost a great commentary on our own society now, that people who lack the right experience of human nature can have a skewed sense of justice and become unbalanced in their pursuit of political correctness. Anyway, then comes Mega Man ZX, ZX, whatever, that doesn't really have a real incarnation of Mega Man Zero. In fact, the cast is all dead and merely equipment that can be used with anyone with a pure heart or something. I'm not entirely familiar with this series, but I guess it makes sense. Mega Man's original programming and duties ended up being corrupted and mutated into a horrible psychopathic dictatorship that ended up making society fall apart. So now he's merely a piece of equipment, no longer tied to any specific society, humans or Reploids. It's just powered by a general sense of righteousness or something. Then we get to the final incarnation of Mega Man from the Legend series, Mega Man Volnut. Fittingly, for the final incarnation, he's a complete mirror version of classic Mega Man. Just like classic Mega Man, he was initially created to be a servant, assisting the last human alive, which is why he has a more mellow and friendly personality, and like classic Mega Man, he ends up becoming an ambassador. As the last person who knew and understood humans, he represents humanity in a now robotic world, like how classic Mega Man represents robots in a human world. So it's a nice, complicated and bit convoluted loop, but a loop nonetheless. It's neat to see the whole series evolve and flow naturally from one era to the next. Well, minus that every era except for the Mega Man Zero one never had a final chapter and all end on a cliffhanger, or at least the ending without an ending, but whatever. I like it, and Mega Man Legends is a great end of the circle, because it ends more optimistic and cheerful again, which is great after all the depression and death Mega Man X had to go through. Mega Man Legends makes it all feel it was worth it in the end.
I actually look towards the series that came out before Mega Man Legends. It was the Ruby Spears cartoon, and I feel it draws close similarities or a bit of inspiration from there, because in the Ruby Spears cartoon, Mega Man was, just as you said, in that he wanted to make friends first, but he had a sense of, hey, if these robots are trying to attack my family, then it's my job to stop them. And Volna, in a way, is like that, even though he's not directly like Mega Man in so that you can choose to have him be a vandal or be a good guy, depending on what you feel like doing with the character while you're playing the game.
Of course the TV show doesn't have choices like that. I don't know. The Ruby Spears Mega Man was a lot more macho. Girls can fight along, I have to do this. He's more American superhero Mega Man. Although, especially in hindsight, I really respect how close the show was to the source material, even acknowledging X and all. Compared to all other game TV shows, these guys really did their homework, so it's pretty awesome. A little too slapsticky sometimes, but yeah, close enough.
Mega Man Legends does something fascinating to me. It takes all cliches from bad children anime, but it gives them all little twists that not only make it more bearable, but downright fantastic at times. Like, the things I hate the most about simple RPGs is when there's a huge emphasis on good versus evil. When the hero is the chosen one with magical powers granted by God himself, while the bad guy is some sort of sealed away evil demon that escapes. Problem with that is that it discourages a direct connection with the characters and narrative structure. Heroes aren't heroes because they act correctly or represent righteous behavior. They're just good. With bad guys, I like to see their rise. How just a simple man or woman that goes on the wrong path slowly grows into the monstrous entity that symbolizes the evil of their deeds. I like to fight a bad guy because he's greedy or jealous or self-obsessed or disrespectful. You know, observe how human vices can create tragedy and downfall. But by immediately labeling everyone good and evil without any human attributes earning them that title, the story becomes empty. It's about nothing. Being good is good, being bad is bad. Go punch bad. Okay. Fine for an action game, but in an RPG with lots of cutscenes, give me something more. So, Mega Man Legends technically has those elements. Mega Man is your typical amnesia-suffering kid who came from a godlike civilization and is granted powers and skills beyond a typical villager, but it's all downplayed. Mega Man gets his reputation from his actions, not his past. People respect him because he saves the day and fights bad guys, not because some god dramatically pointed to him and went,
"Whoa, everyone behold! This guy is now chosen superhero! Hand that guy a magical keyblade and make all kings and sages whisper his name and send them allies and away on missions, while praising his amazing abilities of existing and being chosen by me."
And while there is the typical sealed away evil, the thing is, the bad guys are barely treated as full-on evil. They're just robots with a mission. They're not evil. Mega Man never even lectures them. Just robots doing their job. It's kind of fascinating that the only Mega Man Legends game that has even remotely like a real villain is Lex Loaf, the loan shark from Misadventures of Tron Bonne.
Yeah, the only game with a genuine villain is the game starring the other villains. Mega Man has always been more about humanity versus robotic logic rather than good and evil, and this is especially the case in Mega Man Legends. Another thing I dislike in the more childlike animes and RPGs is the forceful morals of friendship and working hard. Don't get me wrong, they're great morals, and I love it when a story earns their big friendship speeches. Sadly, a lot of anime games forget about this and have characters preach about friendship at the drop of the hat, even when, in the real sense of the story, friendship never really took an active part in solving the problems of whatever it's about. I don't know, there's something dishonest by having a hero who's the magic chosen one and granted magical superpowers by the gods themselves to be going around preaching other people about how to behave, and then never following his own examples anyway and just killing the bad guys by himself anyway. The great thing about Mega Man Legends that makes such a simple and almost childlike concept like friendship surprisingly interesting and mature is that it's never the heroes who do the preaching of the morals, it's the side villains. It's the Bond family that are yelling about working as family and doing their best to succeed, while Mega Man and his friends more operate on Spider-Man logic. With great power comes great responsibility, Roll super genius, Mega Man powerful warrior, Barrel and renowned scientist. They just help people and take responsibility to be as useful as possible. They just do it. No, the morals and symbolic death is really handed to the villains. And they are constantly failing, constantly losing, constantly being blown up and humiliated, yet keep coming back time and time again. And what's more, they rarely, if ever, give up hope, no matter how humiliated they are, no matter how much of their dreams and plans fall apart, no matter on what danger they find themselves in, they always find time to reassure the other and show respect and care for the other. I don't know, there's something surprisingly charming and more so inspiring about giving the losers of the game the moral high ground. Having almighty Super Mega Man lecture the world while knocking out giant robots in the sky like it's nothing may feel dishonest, but watching these poor losers never give up and coming back stronger and stronger gives the moral a sense of depth and more importance. In the end, it's much more satisfying to see the poor losers finally win and get away with the treasure than to see our superhero save the day. And not to mention, the moral works much better for the weak anyway. It's especially the people dangling below the food chain that requires all the moral strength, cooperation and attitude they can gather, rather than those who already have the strength. The Bond family could have easily become like Team Rocket, mostly there for a cheap laugh. But the game puts in a surprising amount of tragedy with them as well. It's always frustrating to me as a kid to see Team Rocket get humanized with a tragic backstory in one episode and then treated like trash in the next. So I like how Mega Man Legends always keeps a human element with the Bonds. Tron's genuinely heartbroken when her attempts to woo Mega Man backfires. First thing Mega Man does when he sees the Bond family for the first time after he thought he accidentally killed them is express his joy that they're still alive. It's great. Again, like I said, Mega Man Legends isn't about good versus evil, it's about humanity first and foremost. This is human companion Mega Man, not police officer Mega Man.
You make a great point about the Bond family. I always like the fact that Teasel's never say die attitude and always looking out for his family became much more prevalent over their own personal gain. If it cost them their lives, he would never agree to it, or he would never tell Tron, yeah, keep fighting until, you die. That wasn't his style. He always wanted his family to come first. Tron or Bon. And the good thing about Tron as well is when you look at her family, you also have to look at the multitude of servbots that she created as well. All these servbots have different personalities and feelings, and what they're good at and what they aren't good at is something you don't normally see from the villain side. Like, most henchmen are going to be like, yes sir.
What interests me about the Servbots is how Tron even programmed laziness and other mental weaknesses in the Servbots. And unlike with Eggman, I think she did it on purpose. She's seeming to enjoy her mother role. Tron is often called the Dr. Wily from the Legend series, taking over his part as the comical villain, even though Legend already has an actual Wily walking around, but never mind. But here she shows some elements of being more like Mega Man's creator, Dr. Light. In that Light also deliberately programmed human weaknesses like doubt into Mega Man X on purpose, to keep him grounded. When they later make a Mega Man without human vices to be completely perfect, we end up with the psychopathic copy X. Again, it's the theme of Mega Man, humanity versus robots. and it's great that they put effort in praising human flaws like fear and laziness as much as strength, like bravery and strength. I guess that's the good versus evil thing. Balance between good and evil. Balance between good human behavior and bad human behavior. So look at that. Megaman does a better job at selling the idea of balance between good and evil than many RPGs and anime do, while never even needing to call direct attention to it. How about that? So last dissected video I talked about Shamu, and its celebration of the mundane. Now, Shamu went extremely far when it comes to using small details to do world building, which gave it a lot of charm, but can also scare people off. Megaman Legends, on the other hand, also uses a touch of mundane, but much tighter and more efficient. Now, Megaman X is where the big stories in Megaman began. While I really like Megaman X, there's always one thing bothering me that never made a drama work for me, and that's the lack of choice, hope, and possibilities. See, a huge theme of Megaman X is about X's struggle, that he's a peace robot, yet he's forced to kill. The problem is that I rarely really care about the deaths and tragedy in the Megaman X universe, because in order for tragedy to work, I need an element of lost potential. That's what people always say when someone dies, right? Ah, he was so young, he was about to get a new job, the movie cliche, ah, just one day before retirement, he was going to get married this weekend. Even though that cliche is now discredited, it's used too often. But it's become a cliche for a reason. That's how tragedy works. There needs to be this positive element that's lost. With the Reploids in Megaman X, we never really get a glimpse of their personal lives. They're always robots doing their jobs. Policeman Megaman! He doesn't have a house, or Dr. Light, or hobbies, or a sister, or friends. He's just Police Officer Megaman, on the job, looking at computers until bad guy appears and needs to be shot. The closest we get to a personal life is watching Zero in the recovery tubes. I guess the Reploids' version of sleep. But that's it. Reploids do their job, recover in their sleep pods, then go back to work. So the life of a Reploid goes in two directions. Either you're a job person, or you're infected by the Sigma virus and become evil Maverick. Either you function, or you don't function. So X shooting them isn't tragic to me, because there's no hopes or dream lost, it's just a malfunctioning robot. Like you have this one Maverick, Split Mushroom. He was a scientist in the lab, and the scientist robots are effectively shut down and killed because they're no longer relevant. And then the bad guy comes and revives him. Now, you think that would be the focus, right? The Split Mushroom is like, I worked hard my whole life, and they just kill me because humans no longer need me? I want revenge! See, then there's an element of tragedy. A loyal worker who wanted to do nothing but his job suddenly cast aside and killed for his trouble. But nope, the story doesn't go into that direction. Instead, it's just, and the guy that resurrected me wants me to shoot you, so I'll shoot you. And then X shoots him instead, and he explodes. Oh. Okay. And that's typical Megaman X to me. The plot tries to play with the idea of false hopes, betrayal, manipulation here and there, but most Mavericks are rarely shown to be more than just crazy robots that need to be shut down. The only exception I can think of is the army from X4, but otherwise, eh. So don't get me wrong, I love the X series for their gameplay, but the story never quite clicked for me. This is why I was so impressed by Legends, that managed to root the characters in much more stronger foundation just by sprinkling little mundane details here and there. And not only can we explore the cities in Legends and see mangas and video games and televisions everywhere, hinting to a sense of entertainment and joy in this world, unlike say in the Megaman X RPG Command mission, where the city in the Megaman X universe is nothing but dull, boring corridors and work, people doing work things, with the only entertainment to be found being item automats to buy equipment from. I love seeing Megaman enroll briefly in their pajamas, or the Bond family in work clothes, again giving a small glimpse of a real world going on when they're not adventuring, and giving them a sense of humanity and vulnerability. And best of all, unlike Shenmue, the game does this without disrupting the pace of the adventure. The world details are just background decorations. While we see Megaman enroll hang around home, the story and their motivations are still being discussed, so the story keeps moving forward. And the game is great in revealing a ton of information about the character in just a couple sentences.
Now tell me, just what do you think you're doing here? I thought you had gotten out of the pirate game,
Stuff it, Clyde. Mind your own business. We've got enough problems as it is.
What, did your little department store go under already?
Ah! No, it hasn't gone under. We're just a little in the red this month, that's all. Just need a little extra cash to make ends meet.
If you didn't buy only what you like, maybe we wouldn't be in this fix.
By introducing the idea that Bond families primarily interested in owning a department store and are mostly embarrassed and frustrated to be back in a pirate game immediately gives them a goal to achieve, a prospect for them to get out of crime, and goes to show that they're villains out of desperation more than out of evil, contrasted with Glide, who's prideful of his position as pirate and is condescending to them about owning a little department store and therefore has a lower morality level. The idea that the Bond family mostly just wants to be a legit store owner therefore makes their failures gain a level of strategy. It's the loss of their hope for a better life and Teasel's flaws as a human being that forces them to get into these battles. Rather than Glide, who is more straightforward bad guy and therefore is more treated like a straightforward cartoon villain.
As you so put it, it's basically making the villains have a human quality to them. That's not something all video games will do. The Bond family having to be a villain just to get by while also trying not to be evil is something that really made me love Mega Man Legends. One thing I can take from it is that you even have that example of there's also just a villain to be a villain with Mega Man Juno at the end.
And Loven Sarah in the next ones.
He just wants to reset everything according to his programming, so we consider him evil in a sense that there's no motive and beyond to him, and his program is something's wrong here, humans are running about, I was told there shouldn't be humans, I need to wipe them all from existence.
Indeed, so you can still be genuinely heroic without feeling guilty. Anyway, I've been a little too harsh on Mega Man X, so I still want to say I enjoyed that side series as well and has a great story, providing an entirely different perspective on Mega Man. It's just more militaric in nature, and I prefer this. This video is getting long, gonna cut it up here so we can focus on what this all means for Red Ash next time. Hopefully before the Kickstarter ends.